All right, thanks so much, everyone, for having us on here. I know there's nothing better than like the app being the presenter on the afternoon of like the last day of a conference when everyone's attention is at 100%, I'm sure, and or you haven't left already. So and it's just after lunch, and we're doing it virtually, but we'll do our best to keep your attention and give you some great takeaways. And again, like I said when I first got on. If anything goes wrong, just blame Scott Henry, and you can take it all out on him because he's there on the ground. So we appreciate everyone for coming in and letting us not only letting us present, but watching what we have to provide. So like we said, I'm Brian Marin, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Operations for Arcadia Cognerati. And what we are is a service provider specializing in assessing, developing, and conducting training programs, and providing consulting services to address urgent safety and security needs in some of the most challenging environments on the planet. We're the world leader in developing cognitive training content, leveraging both our proprietary process of human behavior pattern recognition and analysis, which we'll talk about today, and couple that with the understanding of the limits of human cognitive performance. And what our programs do is they empower individuals and organizations with a cognitive force multiplier that gives you the gift of time and distance so you can make informed critical decisions, allowing for de-escalation and intervention, allowing for better outcomes. And we're going to cover today some of the basic elements of HBPRNA and what that is. And although we only have so much time, it's not really a training event, it's just sort of an educational webinar. We've got some great stuff in here and some simple takeaways, especially towards the end, that you can write down and you can literally walk out the door today and start using them and start thinking about what they mean to you. And so since you were talking to a room full of experts, we love that. We know you're going to have a lot to provide. We want to give you a perspective that you may not have considered before, or that you may have seen before, you just didn't really know how to articulate. And that's where we come into play. So we're going to be talking for about 45 minutes or so, and then we'll hang on for another 15, 20 minutes, however long you want for questions and answers. So I'd like to do some introductions first, starting with just the folks from Arcadia who are on the call today. We got Greg Williams, and Greg is the president and founder of Arcadia Cognerati and creator of HBPRNA, that human behavior pattern recognition and analysis. So he's the creator of it. And Greg is a decorated veteran urban law enforcement professional. He's a veteran soldier as well. He's over 30 years combined experience of expertise. He's an industry expert in irregular warfare and human behavior for the defense community and is the creator of HBPRNA. He's a subject matter expert for Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency as well as the Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Agency, and has worked on a number of different government projects at the state, local, federal level as well. And he's the architect of several scientifically validated programs, including the Marine Corps Combat Hunter Program and the U.S. Army's Advanced Situational Awareness Training. We've got myself, like I said, I'm Senior VP of Operations for Arcadia Cognerati, and I'm a former Marine sniper with multiple deployments to LMR of Iraq. High threat protection security professional and subject matter expert on human behavior. I've spent the last over 20 years conducting both real world and training operations all over the United States, the Middle East, and both Central and East Asia, where I've trained thousands of law enforcement and military professionals in the science of human behavior and cognitive performance. I have a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's in applied psychology from the University of Southern California. Not with us on the call today, which is important to remember, is two folks. One, our CEO, Shelly, there on the left, excuse me. Shelly, also a decorated veteran urban law enforcement professor or professional, not just actually urban areas, but rural communities as well. She's what I call the keeper of all the knowledge and our sort of memory bank for everything we've done, and she literally keeps us steered in the correct direction within our company. And so Shelly couldn't be on the call today, but also who can't be on the call today is Martin Woolley, and Martin Woolley is our international program manager and does our business development. Martin Woolley's a retired British naval commander and EOD diver, former ambassador to Oman for the British Royal Navy, and we typically like having him do these type of briefs. And the reason why is when he comes on with his British accent, we call it the sham wow effect. Suddenly he'll take what I just said and make it sound 10 times better, and everyone seems to gravitate towards him more, even though he's saying the same things we are. We also have an advisory board that it's important to understand who we have sort of behind the scenes, so you guys understand everything that goes into what we're talking about today. And starting on the left, we have Mr. Dan Chavez, who's an instructional design and human performance technology professional with decades of experience designing, developing, and delivering learning solutions in the private and public sector. His focus is providing performance-based and cognition-centered training to professionals who operate in complex environments. We also have Mr. Clark Dever. He's an entrepreneur with over 15 years of experience in emerging technology. He explores the commercial edge of technology, fractal in the realms of virtual reality, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence. And he has a proven track record of driving innovation within organizations. We also have Dr. Joan Johnston. She's kind of like our chief science officer in a way. She has 30 years of experience as a senior research scientist with the Department of Defense. She has extensive collaborations across Department of Defense, academia, and the private industry. And she was a principal investigator and project manager for the Office of Naval Research sponsored program called Tactical Decision Making Under Stress. So between that and her work on a small unit decision making and several others, she's been at the forefront of the science behind human performance and team performance literally for decades. And we have Major General Sim Trimbitis, who's retired two-star general. Sorry, I got that right. He has over 37 years of active duty. He's a general officer for 9 years in various duty assignments, including commanding general Special Operations Command, Korea, as well as commander of the Iraqi National Counterterrorism Force during Operation Iraqi Freedom. He was also senior defense attaché to the U.S. Embassy in Mexico and culminated his career as deputy commanding general of United States Army North. We have a bunch of collaborations that we do with other companies, and that allows us to stay focused on what we do. So we get to remain experts in the field of human behavior and then work with other folks that have different programs. One that you've likely heard of, well, two, probably Wrap Technologies, but also Milo Cognitive Division specifically with their video-based trainers. We've developed content for them, their new Hoberman series that goes from taking these binary shoot, don't shoot, video-based training scenarios and actually putting critical thinking and decision-making skills into them. So it's no longer this jack in the box. Is it, 0 or 1 threat or not a threat? It's how do I think my way through this situation? But if you want to learn more about us, we're all over social media now. You can follow us on any of the sites. And then we also have what's called the Left of Greg podcast, which is sort of our, I guess, opinion-based testimony on different topics, whether things that are going on in the news or just some principles that we teach. You get a good idea of what we talk about. You can check that out there sometime. So what you're looking at now is sort of a representation of some of the different agencies or organizations we've worked with. So you've got federal, state, local law enforcement. You've got both here in the U.S. and abroad. You have a conventional U.S. military and, special operations U.S. military, and not just in the U.S., but abroad as well. There's different government research organizations, different academic institutions. And the reason, we like to talk about that and show that is to show what our work gets us into. And of course, we also work a lot with first responders and law enforcement today, and we're able to work in a number of different sectors targeting a wide variety of issues because our programs do not rely on language, skin color, ethnic background, or ideology. They rely on science. So that means they work anywhere in the world. So, for example, when I travel to another country, I don't have to learn the German laws of gravity or the Japanese laws of thermodynamics because it's all the same thing. And we stick to elements of human behavior that are completely universal, and our system can be used on anything that is touched or influenced by a human being. And what separates us from anyone else doing anything like this is we've already been poked and prodded by a whole bunch of different government research organizations that all of our tax dollars go to. And everything from U.S. Army Research Institute, the Office of Naval Research, spent tens of millions of dollars studying HBPRNA, and they found it to be, in their terms, in scientific terms, highly effective. They found it to increase what they called situational awareness by over 300%. And so not only was the science validated, but our pedagogical approach is extremely effective. And even recently, we ran into some more folks that our tax dollars go to at the Institute for Defensive Analysis, who did a audit of several human behavior-based programs, and a lot of what they found were theoretically flawed and ineffectively executed. And the only one they recommended to military and law enforcement agencies worldwide was at the time was called the Marine Corps Combat Hunter Program, which Greg is the architect of. So what we're talking about today is what we do. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we've done before. And what we're going to give you today is sort of our approach on how we take on things. So you can constantly see in the news the range of different incidents that happen to law enforcement, everything from too much force to not enough force, to police officers being killed, to people, the public being killed, and things that didn't need to happen. And everyone likes to say, okay, we need more training or we need better training, but we often don't look at the problem correctly. And the way we look at things are through failures in sense making brought about by limitations of human performance. So I'm going to go ahead and pass to Greg and let you jump into exactly what we're talking about today.
Yeah, hey, everybody, thanks. We're honored to be here. Thanks for all that you do. Thanks for your service. So let's discuss a couple of the mistakes of human performance. Slide, please. We're not going to be able to go into great detail today because we got such a short format and it's not really training. It's more of a educational feel. But there are limitations in the human eye that don't allow you to see things as they are really happening in the environment that surrounds you. There are limitations in the brain that do the same thing. Cognitive reality and reality aren't the same thing. For example, something as simple as orientation, your functional field of view can work with your visual field at the back of your brain and create a cognitive illusion, something that's not really a threat that's in front of you. And you'll believe it enough to testify in the stand that the person had a gun or a knife. So we like to go through some of those situations during training and show you how to overcome them. So it's not just the fact that we point out, hey, here's what goes wrong. We actually show you how to overcome those in extremis. What that means is under stress in a variety of situations. Slide, please. So if you take a look at what we're talking about, on the left-hand side of the slide that I'm looking at, I see knowledge and information, beliefs and experience and biases. All of these things, when given time and distance, and the fact that the situation is constantly evolving. Hey, what am I thinking? What do I believe? What do I know? What am I feeling right now? The temperature outside, it's raining. It's a new scout car. I didn't check the oil. It's a pursuit. All of those things impact how you sense make. And how you sense make impacts how you problem solve. So if there's a glitch in the program at any of those key steps, then the limits of human performance step in and say, not today. Those mistakes cost tens of millions of dollars. They cost officers' lives. And our job is to make people smarter, stronger, faster, and harder to kill. Slide, please. So we do that with a think rather than a thing, because the biggest problem of a failure in sense making is you become overwhelmed by events or overcome by emotions and make a critical error. No matter what the policy is, no matter how much training that you've had in shoot, move, and communicate, you'll make a catastrophic error in the moment, and that can lead to your death or the death of somebody else, or a violation of policy that's going to lose your faith in the community, or have the community lose faith in your organization. Slide. So the idea is, let's take a look at a couple of them that you can think of and see how it unfolded. Slide. So Hawk Jones is a fighter pilot that distinguished himself over the skies in Iraq and Afghanistan. He was putting aircraft through paces you wouldn't believe, actually getting in dogfights and doing a bunch of wonderful stuff. Well, now he's in the National Guard and he's in northern Minnesota, flying over northern Michigan, and they gave him a new helmet that's got some new gear on it. And Jones loses his sense of location with the geospatial coordinates that are inside of his helmet. It starts to rain. His night vision is impacted. He's not exactly sure where he is. And all of a sudden, he burns in a couple of $1 million aircraft into the side of a mountain in northern Michigan. And now he's 30 some years old with a wife and a kid, a veteran. He's dead. Slide. And what happened there is that the unfamiliarity with his technology led to his death. It was a contributing factor in his death. Okay, so sometimes a thing can get in the way of me clearly thinking my way through a situation. Let's take a look at another one. Slide, please. So this is Iran Air Flight 655. Slide. The Vincennes is positioned in the Mediterranean, and there's so much activity and so much to cover during this situation that they see an Airbus flying in with 300 people on board, and they mistake it for a missile. They're so sure that it's a missile that they fire on it and bring it down and kill everybody on board. Slide, please. So what is that? That's a situation where there's so much noise in the command center, there's so much noise at dispatch that I got a bunch of people killed because I can't focus on what's truly important. I'm picking up signals and I'm misinterpreting the information. Okay, let's do another one. Slide. This one is about Shinzo Abe. Shinzo Abe is a revered figure, was in Japanese government. And Shinzo, the longest serving president of Japan during the time, decides, hey, the people still love me. I'm still relevant. So I'm going to go out on a street corner and I'm going to stand on a guardrail with a megaphone and I'm going to say my piece. Well, the problem is that he doesn't understand that there's some people that don't want to listen to him. So a guy in a culture where there are no guns builds a double barrel 12 gauge single shot and misses completely with the first shot, but is able to clip him and kill him with the second shot while security, as you can see in the background, and everybody else looked on. Slide. Here's a situation where the principal actually gets killed because its instincts are wrong. He doesn't rely on the best information possible, and no intelligence can form except with information that's given on the ground. And if the information's bad, guess what happens to that intelligence? Slide, please. So now we've got one that we want to talk about, and it's NTSB. So what are we talking about, the NTSB? Well, I'm going to tell you something that your brain does that you're not going to expect. Slide, please. And what it is that if you get a stall in your small plane, the easiest way to recover from the stall is to pull up, and then all of a sudden, when you level off at the desired altitude, what's going to happen is your plane is going to recreate the speed and you'll be able to start that engine again. But the problem is that you have to dive to do it. So as you're diving with your small plane, that feels counterintuitive that you drop the nose and aim at the ground. Slide, please. So what happens here is your primitive fear of crashing that airplane prohibits you from aiming it at the ground and getting your stall speed up. And guess what? Many pilots, as a matter of fact, it's the most common way for a small engine pilot to die, is to not trust their instincts in this situation and get killed because of the overwhelming fear. Slide, please. So let's talk about what's on everybody's brain now that school's back, and that's mistakes in human performance that lead to a school shooter sneaking in and taking our most prized possession. Well, Ethan Crumbley is a perfect example. Slide, please. And in Michigan, Crumbley gave off all the warning signs. Yet nobody reacts to the warning signs, even though, slide please, they're actually in the office with the gun in the bag, with the principals from the school and the parents, and nobody reached across and even shook the bag, even though the school resource officer said, yeah, you know, it seemed that it was heavier than a normal bag. They go right by it. Why? Because they're knee-jerk reactions in the moment, not to, you know, further exacerbate the situation, not to make Crumbley look like a bad kid, not to insult the parents anymore, stops them from following procedure and saving lives. So what does that lead to? Slide. The final example I'll give you is Jaylon Elmore. Slide, please. So school resource officer sees Jaylon come in with a heavy bag, talks to a couple of students, and the students say, yeah, he's got a gun in the back. So they grab Jaylon, they take him into the superintendent, one of the teachers who's also a physically fit person that runs gym stuff, and you got Jaylon and you got the school resource officer. And they all stand there, don't do anything until Jaylon pulls the gun and shoots everybody in the room, and they have to shoot him. Slide, please. So what does that mean? That means even though we're faced with information that can fast and rapidly approach intelligence, we're so scared to do something wrong that we do nothing. And we all know fight, flight, or freeze. Well, this is a type of cognitive freeze that can get you killed. Slide, please. So what we need is we need a cognitive architecture to help support or hone our overwhelmed or outdated survival instincts. Because what happens is unless the scales fall from our eyes, unless we see things in context as they actually are, we're going to continue to make these mistakes. So how do we get ahead of it, Brian?
So what we're talking about is building a skill set that creates a mindset, and that's what we call the left of bang mindset. Now, maybe you've heard those terms used before, or read the book written about Greg's course, but the idea is we don't still fully implement it. So to explain what we're talking about is, if I look at this slide, what I'm looking at is a timeline of events. Think on the left is when you wake up in the morning, and the right is when you go to bed at night, or the left is when you're born, the right is when you die. Doesn't matter what the timeline is. That bang in the center, people typically think about, okay, bang, yeah, that's that school shooting, that's that terrorist attack, that's that chaotic situation. Well, bang is just anything, unplanned event that could have been mitigated. So if you forget to set your alarm in the morning and you sleep in late, and now you're running late for work, you're what? You're at bang. In that moment, you are at bang. And most tactics, techniques, and procedures are reactive, right? And we need to have those, right? law enforcement. So someone calls 911 and you have to go, right? But the idea is there's always going to be something else. And we've gotten better at this reactive way of doing things, meaning we're getting sort of closer and closer to that bang, and we're getting better and better at responding, but we're not mitigating it. We're not actually getting out there and saying, how do we mitigate something from happening? Or even in this moment, how do we not let something rise or escalate to a situation where it's become even more catastrophic? So what we focus on is everything left on that timeline. We are all about pre-event indicators. This is our area of expertise, about being proactive and predictive, understanding sense making and problem solving so you can see things before they happen and intervene sooner. And the idea is there's always going to be another bang. Just because the person fled on a traffic stop, that's the first bang, okay, but there's more after that, right? So if we understand advanced critical thinking skills, we can use pattern recognition and analysis, something humans are born knowing how to do, right? So we can be left of the next bang. We can mitigate something from actually happening. And the way we do that is through critical thinking. Now, everyone will say, hey, you got to be a critical thinker. Hey, we got to start using our heads. Hey, we got to start thinking our way through the situation. Those are platitudes. What does that mean? How do I actually do that? Because you can learn to be a better critical thinker. In fact, the more experience you have, the more file folders, the more you have to draw on, the better critical thinker you can become. But I got to learn how to articulate that. I got to understand what that means. I have to go spend as much time in the cognitive gym that I do on the range or do in the actual gym, right, in order to understand and use everything that I'm already born knowing how to do as a human being. Because we're talking about is making better decisions. If I have informed awareness and I know what it is that I'm doing, I can sense, make, and problem solve and make better decisions for a better outcome. And people talk about risk and uncertainty, and those are two different things, right? Risk is something you're a part of, right? Your job is inherently dangerous, and there's going to be risk associated, but you can mitigate risk by planning and knowing what those risks are. Well, when it comes to uncertainty, we're talking about things that we don't know. We're not sure what could happen. And any event could technically spiral into some uncertain area. So I have to be able to navigate that uncertain. And that's where that decision making in extremis comes in these stressful situations. Even though you don't think, even though you're doing something for the 100th time and you've seen it before in your career, you don't realize sometimes the limits of cognitive performance you have in that moment. And we're constantly outrunning those limits. Right? We're asking people to do things that are physically impossible for any human to do. I don't care how well trained you are. I don't care what tier, whatever unit you were in, and what cool school you went to. I'm talking about limits of cognition that affect every single human being, whether you're the good guy, whether you're the bad guy, whether you have no training or you have a lot of training. So what we want to give you is the gift of time and distance. The idea is if I have some more time into the situation right now, I can make a better decision. Well, how do I gain more time, right? I can't slow down the clock when I want to. And we all rush to judgment, say, well, I got to get with this now. Well, if I increase my ability to sense, make, and problem solve, if I can recognize things faster in my environment, I'm speeding up how much time I have. I'm able to make a better, more informed decision in less time. So therefore, I'm gaining that time and distance, right? And we don't do this as people, right? Because what happens when things get busy? Well, I'll tell you what some security teams do, and we do work with all kinds of different organizations. And so I'm not going to tell you where at Busch Gardens this actually was, but what they said, when crowds get really busy and those lines get long in the summer, right? When everyone's going through the metal detectors, you know what they do? They just turn down the sensitivity of the metal detectors so they have to check less people and get people in sooner, right? And you're saying no way that happens? That happens everywhere we go to. We do threat vulnerability assessments in some of the most secure locations you can imagine. And what is it? It's always mistakes in human performance. Someone propped a door open because they got lazy. They didn't want to have to go in and out and keep using the lock or using their ID swipe card. So they'll put something there, right there to prop the door open or throw the deadbolt over, right? These failures in human performance sometimes come from just someone wanting to go out, right, and have a cigarette. So humans are their own worst enemy sometimes. In fact, if you're anyone, I don't know if you talked about it this week, maybe you did, the recent MGM case of the ransomware going on right now. I believe it's still an ongoing situation where someone did a cyber attack and took hold of their systems and they're trying to get paid money. Guess how they got there? Well, they went on LinkedIn. They found the right IT person's profile that worked at MGM Grand. They called up the employee helpline and said, hey, this is who I am. I am locked out of my system. I need to regain access. And that's how they got in. They have the best systems in the world, and it was a human error that allowed that stuff to happen. And it's not just here, it's all over the world. Some of the places we get to operate, like Saudi Arabia, they have certain security measures at their shopping malls. Yeah, they have to have the balustrades out in front to prevent, a car bomb. They've got all the security cameras, and they even have a metal detector right when you walk in the mall. That gentleman on the left doesn't work there. That's our buddy. That's our Terp translator, Moo. He's a great guy. You don't actually have to walk through the metal detector, but there it is. I can point to it. I can point to it and say, yes, we have our security measures in place, right? So is it real security, or is it just a semblance of security? And so there's some simple things that we can use to help us get better in these situations, right? Now, typically we do in-person training. We got to get in together and, rearrange some axons and dendrites, create some new neural pathways, get you to see the world better. But we want to give you some of those things, some of those takeaways today that you can use. And feel free to write these down and see what it is. But there's simple core principles about human behavior that if I understand really well, they're not just going to work when I'm talking to a suspect, when I'm pulling someone over, right? This skill set makes me a better husband, a better father, a better communicator in every single situation. So Greg, I'll go ahead and pass to you to start them off.
Yeah, so if the training that you're doing doesn't help you as much going to 7-Eleven to get gas as it does going to church, as it does going to the midnight shift in the worst area of your town, then broom it, because it's not going to help you cognitively. You have to have training that you can refer to in any situation, and it's going to help impact your bottom line, your cost benefit analysis. So the first rule of all rules, is that people are the same all over the world. They're just like you. They want the same things that you do. And we're starting to think, oh, Jeffrey Dahmer was different. No, don't think like that. Think that the human that you're about to walk up, talk to, contact, pull over, serve an arrest warrant on is just like you. That calms the situation down in your brain, and you're able to use that information. Let me give you an example. Slide, please. So if I'm in Afghanistan and we go noisy, this is what it looks like. This is a photo that I took, and you can see it's not their first rodeo. They know exactly what's going on, and they know what parts to cover up because it got loud real quick. So let's go 6,000 miles away. Slide, please. And all of a sudden, we're taking a look at a team working through the favelas. And guess what? Has this girl ever been in this situation before? What does she know that's about to kick off here? So those signals are constantly present in your environment. What you have to do is you have to be tuned in like an old style radio to be able to read those signals and then understand the context and the relevance, so you can understand if they're danger or opportunity. That's what we teach. That's what you can do with just the information that people are the same all over the world. Let me show you how to utilize that. Slide. Okay. Is this young lady looking forward to the chow that she's getting? Yeah, we can tell it's going to be the best part of her day so far. Slide, please. So if that's true, I should be able to use that type of knowledge that's inherent in humans and project it on a situation. Slide, please. So the three big things that I do in world is find snipers, find bomb makers, and find insider threats. When I go to another country, I understand they're all bomb makers, need cooling and venting, or their stuff is going to blow up. It's going to be unstable. So the idea is that I don't have to go to Saudi Arabia or to Alaska or to Kansas and look for different things. I look for cooling, ice is cooling, and I look for venting. That's a vent pipe. Those things are universal. So it makes it easier for me to establish a fidelity-filled baseline and pick out those anomalous situations that are dangerous. Slide, please. I give another example. So a double boiler is used everywhere to make bootleg liquor, to make meth, to distill fentanyl or cocaine hydrochloride, and you know what? To melt chocolate for Christmas. So if I was in Austria or I was in Australia, it's a double boiler and it's going to look the same. Maybe the firewood is going to be a little different, or it's going to be in a kitchen that is non-standard based on my experience, but it's going to look the same to your brain. Hydrogen peroxide is the same all over the world. So even if the label is concealed, the bottle is still brown and it still bubbles up when it hits blood. Why is that important? Well, things like nail polish remover, the scent memory from nail polish remover, the acetones in there, make me think of a bomb maker's house. So if I was conducting training or executing a search warrant and I smell nail polish remover in a place it shouldn't be, my brain is going to start saying, danger warning, Will Robinson, sooner than all the other people in the room, and that might save a life. Slide, please. So let's simplify it. My dad was a fisherman. My dad taught me when you're going to go fish in the big ocean, what you do is look for the seagulls, because if they're eating the bait fish, Guess who else is eating the bait fish? The big fish down below. That's what's pushing them up. So I used that same logic when I was on the ground outside the wire in Afghanistan, slide please, as we were moving up on a village and we saw people carrying everything that was important to them over a raging river to a road that was outside when there was a bridge 100 yards away. Well, if you're using the river and you're not using the bridge, that means there's an ambush waiting for you in town. We have to slow the game down. We have to take a look and give ourselves the gift of time and distance so we can sense make these potentially dangerous situations. And Brian used the term mitigate. I'll use the word avoid. It's okay to sometimes avoid the dangerous situation or to slow it down so you don't just go tumbling in. Slide, please. So one of the things I want you to know is the second part, and write it down. People teach you how to treat them. When people teach you how to treat them, you got to listen because you're also on transmit and you're showing them how to treat you. Slide, please. And I'll give you an example of that. Okay, that thing on the left is called a blinker. Apparently, most places in the United States either don't require them or the people don't know how to access them because they don't use them. But if you're not using the blinker and you're not following the speed limit already, that is road rage waiting to happen down further. You're telegraphing that sooner or later you're going to do something stupid, and the best indicator of a future behavior is your past behavior. Female on the right, sitting up in first class on a smaller plane, already got them boots up against the wall. Well, don't be surprised when she pulls out the nail clippers later or asks you to hold her drink during an emergency in flight when the airbags drop. The idea is that people are constantly on transmit. What you have to do is get to the right training so you can tune in to read those signals in context to determine what's likely going to happen next. Slide, please. And I'll tell you, people wanting their say, not their way. Brian, we run into this all the time. Can you give me an explanation?
Just to go right on top of what Greg was saying about humans are constantly on transmit. We all are. All humans are. You do it in the way you walk, the way you talk, the words you use, the words you choose not to use, the way you dress. Everything tells you something about you and you're on transmit. And people always mostly want to have their say, not their way. This is why social media works so well. Everyone gets to have a comment on something. Even if they know nothing about that topic, they get to have their say, right? That's why that stuff is so powerful. Everyone wants to do that. People want to complain to the manager. When I save up and work my ass off to take my wife out to a nice dinner and they screw up my order, I need to get that off of chest. I put a lot into this, right? So the idea is everyone's constantly on transmit. So everyone's going to want to have their say, but not necessarily their way. So what we're looking for is what? People who want their say and their way. Is this person acting up? Which I can tolerate people acting up. I've got kids, I'm used to that, right? But are they acting up or are they acting out? Are they demonstrating their intent? Are they going to do something? So now it's not just complain to the manager. It's I'm going to walk out into the parking lot. I'm going to get the rifle out of my trunk and I'm going to come back and shooting. And that's the difference between those people. And all humans telegraph their actions. You can't not telegraph your actions. In fact, the more you try to hide it, right, to a trained observer, the more you stand out. So people are constantly telegraphing what they're doing at a very, very simple level, right? It's like playing different sports, right? Or playing hockey. You can't stare at the puck because you're going to be chasing that thing around the ice, right? You have to look at what the defender or the person with the puck is going to do to get ahead of it. All humans are going to telegraph that action, whether it's a road rage incident or even the Pope himself the last time when someone grabbed him too strong and pulled him. Did he get pissed and try to hit him? Yeah, absolutely. That was an autonomic reaction. You could see it right there in the moment. So it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to telegraph their intent. And if I understand that, if I can see someone telegraphing their intent, I can use that knowledge to either de-escalate or intervene right before it rises to that catastrophic level. And we always say that intent is more important than motive. I understand why people talk about motive. Mostly it's due because they don't understand the situation. Unless you've had the thought of wanting to kill someone and use their skin to make lampshades out of, you're never going to understand that human being, right? So we want to find out what's their motive. Why would someone do this? Look, I get it, but intent is always more important than motive, right? Demonstrations of intent. So even in something like a computer app, intent means the abstract description of an operation about to be performed, something that hasn't happened yet, but that's demonstrating what is about to happen, right? Very simple explanation of demonstration of intent, right? Someone buys a shotgun, right? You could buy a shotgun for all kinds of reasons, right? You want to go hunt with it. You just want to have it for home defense. You're going to kill someone. You're going to kill yourself. There's a million reasons why you might want to buy a shotgun. But if you take a shotgun, right, and then you take a hacksaw and you cut the barrel down on that shotgun to make it smaller, That's a very simple demonstration of intent. You modify that weapon system for a purpose other than it was intended. That means you have some intent in mind when you did that. And that means you likely knew the outcome of your actions before you were ever going to do it because you meant to do it. That's what we mean by demonstrations of intent. Just like in drugs, like if I've got some a little bit of cocaine on me, I might have a little bit in my pocket. But if I've got I've got a scale and a bunch of small baggies on me, that's very different than personal use versus distribution or selling, right? So those are what things that we look for in everything that people do. And Greg brought it up too about turn signals. Turn signals are a demonstration of intent. I'm informing you of where I'm going, and we have the same problem out here in Southern California where I live. I think they stopped putting them in vehicles, or people just choose not to use them. But the idea is once I do that, I'm always going to do that, right? Those people are on transmit. And again, if I should see that intent, right, I can intervene sooner at a lower level.
So I take a yellow pad all the time, and I'm suggesting to you to take your notepad, your yellow pad, turn it sideways. I get the most use out of it. And one of the considerations that I'd ask you to make between now and Sunday to go out and try is to classify the strategic, operational, and tactical necessities that surrounded the incident that you're going to be involved with, whether it's going to dinner with your family, whether it's going to a liquor store and then watching NFL, or whether it's going on a caper like a homicide or an armed robbery. So slide, please. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. These are operational implications that I'm going to give you an example of that not only impacted the strategic message that the company wanted, but occurred at the tactical level, which means that there was a lack of training and a lack of leadership. The two things that are going to disrupt everything. Slide, please. So take a look at this picture for a minute. So it's 107 degrees in the shade. I'm sitting in this chair, and I watch this giant guy come in. First of all, he didn't have the box. And he walks over to the counter, and those people behind the counter, the fail to thrive that were so big they couldn't get up out of their chairs, said, yeah, can we help you? The guy said, yeah, I've got this big box that's outside. Could somebody come help me bring it into business? And the chubby guy that's standing there, I can say that because I'm chubby too, looks at him and says, hey, right on your shirt, it says transport. So why don't you run your ass back out there and transport that box in? The guy didn't think that was funny, and it was pretty hot outside. So the guy said, seriously, I'm asking one of you, could you help me? Do you have a hand truck? Do you have a cart? And both of those people said, hey, we're in charge of the security and the flight line. You're in charge of the boxes. Run your ass out and get the box. So this went on for a couple of minutes, and I could see the guy doing the slow burn. And I could see also that the operational layer here wasn't going to budge. They were not going to move. So he finally goes out, grabs a box from his truck, comes in, slams it down, creates a big scene. First of all, that could have been prevented. But second of all, I want you to think about how your day starts in homicide. That guy is blocking the entire parking lot. It's 107 degrees outside. You're setting on the horn, beep, 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 and there's not even anybody there in the truck. He comes out from just having this encounter, and you step out of your vehicle and go, hey, pal, would you mind moving the truck? How does that escalate the tensions? This is how homicides happen. This is how those mistakes in human performance occur. And this is just one example of one you could have intervened with. Now, let's talk to your supervisory level. Slide, please. The other thing I want to learn, and I write them at the bottom there, is the psychological, sociological, and physiological implications of the incident that are at hand. What do I mean by that? Well, let me give you an example. Slide, please. So Brian and I are in a caper, and this is a controlled buy situation that's going on, and we know the guy's going to flee. Think about it for a minute. Can we chase the person? All businesses are getting out. It's just about supper time. You can see there's restaurants everywhere. There's people walking in and out of their cars, and there's rain. So does that element raise the danger level? And do I have to consider, hey, let this guy buy and walk, and I'm going to do it another time? What's the coefficient of friction on the ground? Are my tires up to that task? Am I going to clip some school bus that's coming back? These are situations that happen all the time. Where's the trainer for that? Where's the Milo shoot, don't shoot, or the FAT system for those critical decisions? Slide, please. And you're going to go, yeah, I get it. Well, I don't think you do, because every day that you drove by that house that was on the street, that the grass was grown long, you didn't think about why is the grass long and everybody else is mowed. And that's critical thinking. Now, some of you are already ahead of me going, yeah, well, there's a death in the family, okay? And they couldn't get to it. Or the person in the house died. Well, some of you are also thinking, well, what if it's an old lady and maybe my resource officer for the community can go over and help them mow the lawn? Well, I'll tell you, that exact situation happened twice in Houston last year, about a month apart. Slide, please. And in both situations, what ended up happening is a barricaded gunman that shot it out or shot themselves with police because they sent in somebody to mow the lawn. Mowing lawn. I was on a homicide once where a guy used a string trimmer and the neighbor was pissed because he was sleepy and the grass got on his lawn and he walked over and killed a guy. You see that stuff happen all the time. Yesterday in the news, a shoplifter went back to the QVC store and shot the guy that had arrested him after the people dropped the charges. So what you have to do with this lunacy is figure out cognitively which things are going to happen, what order they're going to happen, and how they're about to happen so you can prevent them. Slide, please. And part of that prevention is being able to take a look at a situation when you turn on the red and blues and you say, all of these things are happening all the time. And if my cup is full, I'm going to spill that shit all over the inside of my scout car. So you can't go around with your cup full all the time. And the person you're stopping, they lost their job or they lost their kid or they lost their wife or they're physically lost. They have no idea where they're at. Or this is a novel circumstance in a novel environment. I've never been pulled over and I'm in a rental car. Or you know what? I think I have a warrant, or I know I have a warrant, or I have 2 strikes against me already. I caught my wife cheating and that's why I'm fleeing, or I'm cheating on my husband and I'm heading there right now. Or there's bad weather and there's other kids in the car and I'm scared and I'm tired. When you take a look at all of these situations, this is what cops face on a daily basis, and you know that. Yet we don't consider that, slide please, when we make a traffic stop for a very simple warrant arrest, and the person says, not today, and not you, and shoots it out and kills 2 Barron County cops in Wisconsin. These incidents keep happening because we're not outthinking a cunning opponent. These incidents will keep happening because we're not giving ourselves the gift of time and distance. We're not projecting what's likely to occur next. Slide, please. And that's a function of training and leadership. So we call that overcoming cognitive shortcomings. Slide, please. So the first one I want you to understand is when we talk predictive analysis, it's not a gosh damn ball that you look into that's going to tell you the future, the crystal ball. And it's not tarot card reading. I want you to think of it that when you're trained, slide, please, it's much more like reading cards at Vegas for blackjack. You can predict what's coming next. You can determine in a single hand of cards how many cards are left out. I don't know if anybody plays euchre in the audience, but I'm from Michigan, outside of Detroit. I play euchre all the time. I know what's in somebody's hand when I see the cards turned up, and I can determine what's in my hand. So that's what human behavior pattern recognition is. The analysis portion is, what do you do with that information? Slide, please. And I will tell you this. You have to establish your ML and your MD-COA. Write that one down later too. Most likely course of action, most dangerous course of action. Slide, please. And what I mean by that, this kid's obviously upset. Is he upset because he's got an upset stomach? Is he upset because he bombed his math quiz? Or is he upset because his girlfriend or significant other broke up with him and he's got a 38 tucked in his waistband and he's going to show up at work and kill everybody, then give himself a vent window? You have to determine those things from the cues in the environment. And every environment is on transmit all the time. Slide, please. And I'll give you one for free today. When your ML-COA and MD-COA intersect at some point in the future, that's going to be your ground zero. That's where the crap is going to hit the fan, and you might as well start spreading out that yellow police tape. So if you know where the danger or opportunity is going to exist, and you know it before it occurs, you can be smarter, you can be faster, stronger, and harder to kill. Slide, please.
And a simple algorithm we use, and it can get much more complex, but to boil it down to a very simple idea, it's baseline plus anomaly equals decision. B plus A equals D. The idea is behind it is, everyone wants to know, what do I look for? Give me some indicators. I've seen people teach all kinds of, when someone's arm is at an angle to this, it means that a lot of that's junk or only applies in very, very specific contexts that you're unlikely to see specifically like that. So the idea is I have to rapidly inform my baseline and constantly update it. What's normal for right now, given this specific moment that I'm in, and then how is that changing? And the idea, the baseline is everything. From there, I can observe anomalies. What's different from what I've seen before in the past? What's here that shouldn't be here? Or what's missing that should be here? When I have those anomalies, I cluster them together. If I have 3 or more, I got to make a decision. And now decisions are what we're talking about here, and that falls into what your role is in that situation, what you want the outcome to be, what your policies and procedures are. We boil them down to very simple things in terms of cognition, a rule of 3s of fight, flee, or report. It used to be a kill, capture, contact, or contact, report, intervene. There's different ideas that we do that, but the whole point of training and our training and cognitive training is to lead you to a decision. All the information and training in the world isn't going to help you if you don't do something with it, right? So I have to be focused on everything that I'm doing is leading to a decision. And the beautiful thing about everything that we're talking about today and everything that we teach, The first analogy we like to give, it's like a flashlight. When I turn the flashlight on, the farther out that beam goes, the wider it gets. So I really have this external way of looking at things and scanning and looking at my environment, taking it all in. But I can get laser focused on just one specific person, one thing, one element in my environment, or one thing that I'm working on, and use the same skill set over and over on that. And the idea, it's not just external, right? It's internal as well. I can literally put it on like a pair of sunglasses and look at myself and maybe pull the Taylor Swift and say, you know what? I'm the problem. It's me. The idea is it's not just external and out there dealing with people. It's everything that I do. It's with my own team. Hey, you know what? Greg was late again today. That's really odd for him. Why don't we intervene now and find out what's going on before it escalates and he has a serious problem that he can't come back from, right? The idea is acting on those pre-event indications of whatever it is. So in closing, like I mentioned, we prefer doing in-person training. It's the best type of training you can get. There's some things you can do virtually and remotely, but it falls more under the lines of education. What we do is training. And like I said, you get a bunch of people together, you rearrange some axons and dendrites, you create some new neural pathways, you look and see and understand the world better than you did before you started the course. And a student wrote this down in one of our programs, so I thought it's apt to put it into our capability brief. But the idea is the right solution is expensive, but the wrong one costs a fortune. So like I said, you can reach out to us. We're on social media. You can follow us on there. You can reach out or you can check out the Left of Greg podcast. When you're driving out of here today, check it out on any major podcast player. You can also reach out to us. Dave and Scott Henry both have my contact information, but it's pretty easy to find me. Reach out to me on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect and learn more. So I'm going to go ahead and take this down, and then